Hello, everyone, and welcome to MYHackathon Daily Updates. It's MYHackathon's host, Alexandra, and today I'm joined by a very special guest, no other than Arzumy Md Yusof, the CTO of Fave. It's been a pleasure to have him today for our daily updates, and I would like to thank everybody who's watching today because you're spending time with us this evening for this special daily update. And today's topic is actually something that is not much discussed, which is about the common best practices for Agile Teams. Together with me, Arzumy is going to explore what it is to have this methodology, which is Agile Teams. So, hello, Arzumy.
Hey. What do I call you? Alexandra or Alex? Or
Yes, Alex is okay as well.
Okay, got it. Alex.
So what I understand is that I've known Fave for a long time. It's a digital merchant platform, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think we focus more on payment and loyalty as a platform for merchants and their consumer.
I remember when Fave just started and I started installing the app. It's a very fun app to use until today. And I think you've come a long way because I think I downloaded that app a long time ago, isn't it? How long have you been with Fave?
Right, the company itself probably 5 years, I guess, right? Yeah. But we started as a company called Cafe, which was focusing on subscription for fitness, right? after pretty much like 2 years, then we pivoted to Fave until now. At some point, we acquired Groupon Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia to have our deals platform in place, and also we are pretty much like one of the companies that started the cashless payment during the early stage,
you
right?
did. Yeah, that was a very interesting time when everybody was still getting used to they call it the adoption or to use your phone as a place to pay for
It
stuff.
was crazy. We're almost like this close of killing the service because initially no one used it, right?
Yeah. And I guess tell me more about yourself. Well, how now you're the CTO of Fave, but do please introduce yourself as well.
Right. I've probably been in the startup industry for, I don't know, like 14 years, 15
Wow, that's
years,
a long time.
13 years. Yeah, quite old, already. I started as a sort of like a freelancer and back then in university, right? And then at some point I realized that I don't really like studying. Well, I like studying. I just don't like, taking an exam.
You don't prefer to
Yeah, exactly. I love studying. I pretty much stay in my room and we have like stacks of books and whatnot. And then do a lot of freelance. At some point, I got suspended from university for some mischievous
fact.
stuff that I did. Yeah, and then during that suspension, I started working with this company called Articulate Online. Way back then, right, doing SMS stuff. So during the early stage of SMS, premium SMS, worked there, and then supposed to go back to university. I did that for a while after I realized that maybe not, and just continue working with that company. And from there, promoted to become the CTO. At some point, I met up with Kylie and Joel and joined the company called Youth Says. And then we started as a what's it called? A research platform, right? And then Youth Says becoming Says. Also, at some point, we built groupsmall.com that acquired by Groupon and become like Groupon Malaysia. Yeah, I have a bit of gap in between when I got my first kid. So I worked with this company and rebuilt Friendster.com.
Wow.
If you're old enough to remember Friendster,
Yes, I am old enough to remember Friendster. Thank you very much.
And then I went back, joined Sales again, and then Sales becoming Refresher and acquired by Media Prima, and we started Cafe and become Fave. I also have another startup called Bill Please, that focuses as a payment platform. That's probably almost 7 years already. Yeah,
that's amazing.
kind of like on a high level. Yeah.
That's amazing. I'm actually meeting the person who actually is part of most of the apps that I do that did go through my life. So this is a huge thing for me as well.
It's so awesome when you build something and you see someone use it, right? Back then it says the most interesting thing is when someone forwarded back, on WhatsApp, they forward a sales link, and then you realize that they forwarded it to you, not knowing that you are the one to build it. Yeah, that's always awesome. Same as Fave. When paying something, someone queuing in front of you and using Fave, it gives you this warm and fuzzy feeling. When you build something and someone use it. Yeah.
Oh, that's really nice validation. Like naturally coming back to you, it's very nice.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have so much experience, and I really respect that because it's very hard to find people who actually do the nitty-gritty of stuff. And I understand that I've seen some developers go through a lot, especially in the design or in the thinking of things. So going to our topic, what's your experience with this agile methodology? I call it methodology because I'm not so familiar with the language, but I'd like to know what you have to say.
For me, agile, like entrepreneurship, is pretty much a mindset, right? I mean, you could talk about all the framework out there, like agile framework when it comes to Scrum, Kanban, or whatever it is. There's so many frameworks, right? But framework are tools that probably you would use, but you have to have the mindset first in order for you to strive. Right? Same like entrepreneurship. If you have the entrepreneur mindset, right, you pretty much could use whatever the tools out there and still become successful. So when it comes to agile, it's the same. So first understanding what does it mean by agile, what is agile mindset? And then based on your project, based on your team, based on resources that you have, then you probably would pick what are the right tools of agile framework that you want to use.
That's true,
And
because I do see
sometimes
a lot
people would
of it.
say, people would say agile back then when they started that the agile is an excuse of not planning because you can always change your mind, right? And somewhat true if people start to use it in a wrong way, but there are some sort of planning still in place. It's just what are the period are you looking at, or like how flexible are you, how pragmatic are you when it comes to dealing the project, right? Understanding that as a core concept first. You're going to say
That's
something
true.
just now.
Oh, I was saying, like, I've seen all the words and like different types of methods, and then there's it sounds very chaotic because you see all these. Some people say you have post-its everywhere, and some people say buy a proper software. So it seems very chaotic to me. What do you hearing what you said? So you're saying that is it not one size fit all? So it depends on the team whether which method to use or not at all.
Yeah, exactly, right? So even if you take example, Scrum as a framework, you could get these Scrum Master certifications and whatnot and try to bring it back and do it in your company. But they always make fun of people who are actually not following Scrum true to the Scrum. They call it, you are doing the not Scrum, right? So you're following the Scrum, but you're not really following. And for me, that's probably not the right way of looking at it. Like, yeah, I mean, like Scrum is one framework, but if it does not really fit you well, of course, it is battle tested, right? Which means that you could really make it work if you want to. But depending on the situation or depending on the experience or whatever the external variables, probably the not Scrum is the best way for you to move forward. So finding
It's flexible, isn't it?
exactly, right. I wouldn't say like don't do Scrum, right? I say like if you want to follow Scrum, go ahead, right? But really understanding first, like what does it mean to be agile, and have everyone within the team to understand that. And if you look at like our history, for example, when we started as KFIT and then we switched to Fave, right? That one of the like
Yeah.
biggest pivot ever, right? From fitness, and suddenly you are into payment. Like, how does that work? Yeah, and how far do we plan ahead to get there? Like how, so to think that you, not just as a small team, but a corporation as a whole, being able to pivot yourself, right? So now you start looking at agile at a like the whole organization level, not just on the engineering or product level.
So it also does depend on the scenario planning or the circumstances, right? To where this product or services might pivot to, isn't it?
Yep, exactly.
Did that happen in any of your experiences, or was it a natural progression? Like, was it? Uh, I guess what I mean to ask is that was it like the change that was happen inevitably, or did you have to debate a lot about it? Because sometimes what I feel is that these agile teams, they have to debate a lot. Is that, does that happen a lot as well?
Yeah, I would say, like depending on the context here, right? Of course, everything in life it depends, right? But now
Yeah.
we're understanding the context around here. Let's say for Fave, like when we started, it's pretty much, just a small group of team members that decided the directions of the company, right? So you decide the business direction and the product directions and the technical direction, all at pretty much the same goal. But now we are at a sort of like a larger scale, right? And the question
Yes, you
is
are.
like, how can we still be agile, right? Because we also don't
That's
want
a
to
valid one.
become like a big enterprise where if you want to build something, you need to wait 6 months or 1 year to get there, right? So we need to be able to be in a position where, hey, we can still do experiment. It's just now the cost of running experiment is much higher. right? Which means we need to do something before we do the experiment, where this is where our product design team would come in, right? Doing the early validations or early research to ensure that, hey, you know what, if we want to make an effort to actually build this, it has to be in a position where it will be successful. At least you bet it's going to be successful, rather than just back then when we were smaller, we just think of something and then we go ahead and build it. Right, the code base was smaller, it's much easier to make changes. Versus now, it's just any change you make could impact other things. Right,
That's
so
true.
big corporation is not they're lazy. It's just the cost is higher if they make something, if they made the wrong decisions. Right, so we're trying to reduce these wrong bets. Right, not to say we don't want to experiment, we do want to experiment, but we're trying to reduce the chance of failure. So then we do something, early on, let's say a proper validations or proper research before we decide to, embark on it.
That's a very interesting perspective from you, knowing that the larger an organization grows, the more difficult to stay agile is difficult. I've never seen it from that perspective. Thank you for that. So the next question would be, I guess, also besides the increasing cost of wanting to be an agile and more relevant entity, do you think that there is a factor of it also being about how the team might be fatigued or tired because you're chasing this sort of innovation?
Yeah, there is a factor, right? And even what we learn when we start to grow bigger. Let's say back then, all the previous startups that have been, it's not really big. We probably have like 30, 40 people, right? And generally, you probably would hire some people who are quite similar. But when you work with a larger organization, then you have a different type of people, right? Not everyone was built for startup, right? Some people want to be told what to do, right? And then they will execute really fast. Some people are completely okay with uncertainty, like, okay, today we do this, tomorrow we do something else, I'm fine, I can just do whatever, right? Yeah, but not everyone is like that. So finding that balance is quite important. And it's always a struggle because you need to fine tune, like as like more people coming in, like building up of course we start to figure out, okay, what's the best way around it, but it's still, it's an iterative process too, right? Same like agile is always about iteration. So if you bring that concept to the company level, process level, it's also the same, it's an iteration. So first we figure out everyone likes startup, everyone have startup mindset and can work and deal with uncertainty. But then we realize, okay, not everyone is like that, right? So then we figure, okay, maybe we need to put more communication piece in place, like showing people, okay, where we are going. But even so, we're not to the extreme of, because it's like too extreme, right? One is too chaotic, where everything's like cowboy, just go and build whatever, right? Another extreme is everything need to go through the bureaucracy. You need to submit form to make changes and whatnot. So those are too extreme.
Very rigid, yeah.
Yeah, so we need to be somewhat in between, and it's just a sort of like, like sometimes you move towards the bureaucracy bit, and then you realize, okay, you probably need to pull back, and then you become too loose, people get super confused or frustrated. Okay, then you need to like, maybe I need to add more processes here and whatnot. But the most important thing, regardless whatever it is, process you put in place, is getting people to understand the reason on why we're doing something.
That's
right?
true.
Like understanding the reason why this company is making these decisions, because you can see the same decision from multiple point of view, right? So getting your team members to look from the same frame is the most important thing. You could be building the same thing, but you're telling a different story. You're looking from a different frame, right? And people will see it differently. You could look at it from another frame, and people would like see it differently and think this is stupid, Suddenly you switch the frame, then people look at it and say, oh, actually, this is quite brilliant, right? Yeah. So getting people to understand and looking at the same frame as what you are looking, the same lens or the same angle you're looking, is the key before all the other processes actually, come in place.
So my follow-up question is this chicken and egg situation. Would you say that agile method, it comes first, then company culture, or the company culture mindset first, then you can use the method?
That's like interesting question. I don't know how to answer that, but the way I look at it, whatever it is, people first, right? People always first. And when you say people first, then culture is first, right? The rest of the processes and everything can come in later. If you get everyone aligned, then it doesn't matter what process you put in place, we can still execute, right? You could do, Scrum, you could do Kanban, you can do whatever. You can even do, waterfall. But if everybody aligned, then it's fine. Now, if you talk about my hackathon context, right? And
Yep.
let's say the context is working with the government, then running agile is a bit hard, right? You could say, hey, I'm going to bring agile, mentality to the government. Yes, you could do that, but probably there's a certain level because in the end, where does the money come from? Like government budgeting is always waterfall, right? They're looking at,
Oh,
okay,
yes,
these are
yes.
things you're supposed to deliver, and this is the project amount, 2 million to buy drone or whatever it is, right? Then you pay by that. But agile is like in between, iterative process where maybe in between you realize that, hey, what we plan to build is not what the best way, not the ideal way. Then we need to move, and build something else after we launch. So finding that fit is a tricky process, right? And this is probably where the push need also to come from the government and also from the startup, right? Figuring out how we can work well together because it's not just about development, right? It's about budgeting, the e-perolehan
That's true.
whatsoever, right? Like how they release the budget and everything. So you might have a bit of figuring out how you're going to fit agile mentality within the existing mind frame. It's also the agile process by itself, I would imagine.
That's very
Yeah.
true, actually. I kind of can imagine it because would you say that SDLC or waterfall is very the traditional way because it's easier to budget for? Then the other question that I have in my head is that how do you budget if you want to have an agile team?
Yep. Yeah. So I don't know like how government should do this, right? But if you look at how startup work, like there's probably a few ways. One of the simplest way is probably looking at sort of this incremental budget, right? You have 2 million to build something, right? But you're only going to release it based on the result, for example, right? So you still know this is the allocation. I will give you more if you do more. I give you less if you do. It's simple enough, right? But maybe the existing financial system that I have unable to support this. I think we need to empathize on the current situation too, right? Yeah, maybe people want to push this, right? I'm sure there's a lot of people want to push, for the government to become more agile, but we need to empathize with that. It's because, hey, there's a lot of existing processes in place that probably need to change first in order for this to work. Right? So let's say government to give away this allocation to Cradle. I don't know how this the whole thing works. So
They
just an
get
example.
so finalists get a 250 grant, conditional government
Yep.
grant to have their pilot deployment project done, and then later on, once they see the results, then you and more consideration is done, then you move forward with
Yeah.
whatever government grants that there is, and of course supported by Cradle Fund, of course.
Yeah, so that's an example of a good incremental, right? Okay, here's 250 to run a pilot. So once you run a pilot, okay, here's something more, and something more, right? Yeah. So I would say, from that point of view, that's actually a good way of doing it, right? So again, this agile is not just development, but everything as a whole. Looking like how finance can support this. Like how the HR or the people team can support this. Thinking about that.
I was about to ask you about how long sprints should be, but can you perhaps you can share from your experience before, like how long have you done a sprint session
Yeah.
or any sort of agile practice?
Yeah. Again, answer is depends, right? Um, also depends on the complexity of the projects or like what are the impacts whenever you release something. Like in like during the early stage, probably you say, okay, I'm going to release something every week, right? But as you grow bigger and then you have like more user and whatnot, probably like every week is going to become too confusing to the user, maybe, right? So that's probably one things to consider. Or maybe the code base is too big. If you launch every week, then probably the quality would drop. So there's no one true answer for this. Your sprint could be 3 weeks, could be 1 month, right? Depends on the whole thing. But generally, when you look at the startup, you look at 1 to 2 weeks. That's pretty much like, pretty much like the average time. I wouldn't say that's the best practice. I'm just saying, okay, that's a common practice.
So I guess if I want to be a bit more ambitious and I do want to use Agile as this method, should I work on more than one project at a time? Is that advisable?
What does it mean? Like you as an engineer working with different project or different company, or one company working on different project?
One company working on different projects.
Well, if you have the resource, go ahead, right? Yeah. But if you're just starting up and you have a small team, then focus is the most important thing. Like multiple projects, meaning, context switching, right? So if you look at Fave, for example, our product is the same, right? We have one product, but internally you have multiple projects going on too. And we generally look at one team working on one project. And if team members need to move around, it has to be in a way that, okay, maybe 1 month you move here and then you come back and whatnot. It can't be like, okay, today I want your help and then tomorrow you help some other teams and whatnot. Because context switching is a real cost, and people just won't produce the best result if they need to think about multiple different things versus just focus on one project at a time. So I probably won't advise running multiple projects if your team is small.
Thank you for that. I used to think that they are transferable skills, but you telling me about context switching is very, very useful because I've never thought of it like that. So thank you.
Yeah, the skill is transferable, definitely, right? But the context, that you need to switch every time.
Yep. So focus is very important. And talking about focus, have you realized that we already answered enough questions for 30 minutes?
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I'm going to
definitely.
It's really, really interesting what you've shared with us today. And I guess my next question would be something a bit lighter. I hope it's called lightning round questions. So these are very light questions. You can answer them very, very, very short answers. What's
Short
the
as in
reason?
like one word or like?
No, one word, like less more than one word. What's the reason? What's a recent happy moment for you?
Recent happy moment, a lot, because I do like gratitude every day, and we always find good things that happen every day, right? And like it's hard to pick one. Probably a bunch of good stuff that we launched recently. Oh yeah.
Okay.
I just started to learn new programming language last Friday.
Great.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. It's called Rust.
That's interesting. Okay. Okay, before I go to I just realized that we have one question from the Facebook Live.
Sure.
It's from Ben Ong. Ben Ong, if you're listening. So this is the answer to your question. So Ben Ong is asking, it's a very specific question actually. Is critical path method e-procurement communicating tool to remain agile, since most startups are technology driven and required to scale super fast with limited funding?
I didn't get that question. You repeat it again? Not sure what's the question here.
I guess there's a word missing here. Is critical path method, I think it's asking about the method, used for e-procurement communicating tool enough to remain agile? I think that's the first question. Yeah.
Okay. I don't think I have answered this because I don't understand it.
Okay.
First, I probably don't know what critical path method
okay, that's fair.
e-procurement means. Yeah. So I'm sorry, whoever Ben, is it?
Since most startups are, Ben Ong.
Yeah.
So since most startups are technology driven and required to scale super fast with limited funding, I guess what he's asking is that what would be a good agile method to use with your recommendation, I guess.
I think if you say about scaling fast, right, and let's at what the context here. Let's say you are a team of 3, we just need to prove something, right? Then I would say, dude, just go and release something. Like, who cares about the method or the framework and whatnot, right? That's probably my advice there, right? But if you start looking at, okay, we need to release something concrete and we are a team of 5 or 6 and there's a real client, right? Then decision is actually in the end up to you, like what sort of methodology that you want to use. If you feel like Scrum is too strict, then maybe you want to use Kanban, right? More like a flow based and just keep on releasing and whatnot. I know like a few startups that just build stuff for their own, then they just use the flow, like whenever we release, we release. There's no like deadline and whatnot. But if you were to work with, let's say, the government, for example, then you need to take this into consideration because communicating flow to the government or people who are paying you probably hard, right? You can't say, okay, when we release, we release, all right? They probably would require a certain commitment there. And then now okay, I have a commitment to fill in. Now, what are the framework that makes sense to for me to get there, right? And I don't think you're asking me something without context and say what's the best framework is useful for everyone here. We need more context to understand what's going on in order to decide what's the best methodology or tools to use.
I guess from what you're saying, there's a list of tools that you can use and you can change from time to time. And it's a very forgiving process, whether to adhere to it or not. Right?
I like that. Yeah. So what you say is correct, right? Forgiving process. Every time you make decision when it comes to process, it's always a two-way doors, right? And that's the agile anyway, right? I could make a decision, probably the best decision at that point of time, but 1 month from now, that decision probably not the best decision anymore, right? Right and wrong is always retrospective. At the point of decision being made, it's always right, right? 1 month down the road, probably it's wrong. That's fine, like you go back that door and open another door, right? It's largely 99%. Yeah, 99% of the time, whatever decision that you made, you can reverse it. That's only the very few moment where you make that decision and you can't change it.
All right. Thank you for that. That's very, very nice. So I guess that's the Q&A part from our participants on Facebook Live. Thank you for that question, panel. So we're going back to our lightning round question. I have 2 more questions for you. The second one, we've already answered the first one, which is, what are you thankful for at the moment?
Oh, I thought the first one and the second one looks the same. I'm thankful for, let's say, most immediate one are the team members, the people I work with. People are continuously growing and supporting each other and keep pushing each other to become better, right? And I would say, if you start a company or startup, working with people you can trust is a must, right? Especially when you are smaller.
That's very nice. So my third and last lightning round question would be, what's your secret to happiness?
Don't look from outside, right? Because else you just end up chasing things. One of the advice that I give the engineers, like some of them probably would just go around and say, for me to become better, I need to work with this company. I need to learn from this guy. I need to pick up this new language, blah, 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 whatnot, right? But if you really listen closely, all of those are external, right? Then you would never be happy. You keep chasing, right? Yeah. So it's always thinking about, okay, this is the situation that I'm in. How can I grow? All right. Let's say you have the most boring job in the world, but you find a way to optimize it, to make it better, to learn from it. You don't even need to jump around or work with a different company or whatever it is. Yeah. So a lot of things are actually internal. Don't compare yourself with other people. Easier said than done, of course.
And that's very wise of you to say that, because I think we are guilty for doing that to ourselves most of the time, isn't it?
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Delete Instagram, delete Facebook.
Yeah. Not don't delete. Like don't delete overall. Sometimes if you need it for work, keep it.
Exactly.
So thank you so much. Thanks so much. And it's been a really fun session today with you. I think we've covered most of what we needed to ask in today's topic, and I'm very thankful for that. I'm very thankful for that you have made time. I know you're a very busy person. You made time for today. Thank you so much to Arzumy. And for the participants, thank you so much as well for tuning in today on our live stream on Cradle Fund's Facebook page. Again, you can still expect to see see us at My Hackathon Daily Update every 6 p.m. every weekday. And do take note that if you need or if you want updates, you can sign up to our newsletter. You can go to www.myhackathon.gov.my and you go to the bottom of the website and fill your email in. Also, we do have exciting news soon for you. So do sign up because we actually do have the bootcamp dates and also the upcoming My Hackathon for Johor Bahru, Kuching, Penang, and Kota Kinabalu soon. And I guess stay safe, everyone. And please do stay happy as well. Again, thank you to our guests today. And for everybody, time to digitalize, streamline, simplify, and even disrupt government delivery. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Bye.
Thank you so much for today.